It's very true that in any given moment, anything from this top list could go up or down. But I've been thinking about it for the last month or so as we've been kind of wrapping up the year. And I have my top 20 books of the year that I just enjoyed so much. This would be a little bit different if I was doing it on the best books of the year in terms of, literary merit or this or that. But these are the things that really have stuck with me and have made me think, or have made me laugh, or I've just loved the characters. I'll try to get through all this, but let's go through. So at number 20, I had Roger Zelazny's Nine Princes in Amber. I'm willing to bet that this could go up if I would have kept going with the series. I decided to kind of put it on a back burner because there's just too many things on the go, but I am looking forward to getting through this. And I imagine that this is the type of thing that I'm going to really, really like. I really liked this first one, a Portal Fantasy. Decided to put it on the back burner, but I thought it was great, and I love the covers. Holy smokes. Number 19. When I read this book, I thought it could be number one. That's how much I really like the rest of the books on this. But it is Firelord by Park Godwin. I also have Sherwood by Park Godwin, as well as I think Guinevere is another one from this sort of series. But this is a retelling of the King Arthur story, and I had never quite heard it exactly this way. The Merlin character is almost like one of those old elf-like characters who shows up in dreams and things like that. And it's very much, they kind of push it back to an old, almost ancient Roman day, and it's gritty, and I thought it was great. There were moments of it that just were a little bit out there, and I kind of lost the plot a few times, but I really liked it, and this would be up there in my favorite Arthur retelling, so thought it was great. Another one, number 18, I guess it would be, is Anathem by Neil Stephenson. This was my first book from Neil Stephenson I've ever read. I thought that I would just go right into it. I thought the opening of this is amazing. It has this kind of cloister, or it has this, it's like a cathedral, but based on mathematics, and everyone's sort of cloistered away based on if you're in this area that only comes out once a year, or once every 10 years, or once every 100 years, or 1,000 years. And based on the year and the time, certain doors open, and you may interact with people from, if it's you come out every year, and you come out on a 10-year, like 1990, you would get to interact and exchange knowledge with those of the 10 years. And then every so often, as you might tell, there are those who come out at 100 years and 1,000 years. And there's a lot more going on to it, even though I was very gripped by that first section of it. As it expands, I think people are going to really, really like this one. It is a thinker in a lot of ways, but man, the plot goes into areas that I did not expect going into it. So, number 17, I guess it would be. That would be Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. I really just read this initially just to check it off the list. This guy wakes up basically in bed as a beetle. It seems like it's a type of allegory for people who maybe wake up feeling this way about themselves, or other people feeling this way about themselves, just bedridden, maybe because of an illness, or because of something that has happened within their life. And then, you see them responding to this character who doesn't ever want to get out of bed. And I thought by the end of it, it packed a punch, and truly one of my favorite books of the year. Thought it was great. First humorous book of the year would be Terry Pratchett's Guards. I thought it was great. As soon as I read this one, I went and picked up some other ones from the City Watch. Man, very witty. This is the first Discworld that really hit for me, or really landed. I tried Mort and didn't love it, but I will absolutely, positively continue on with the City Watch. I think it's Men at Arms next, and I've been looking forward to it, and I just don't. I thought I would rip through the whole City Watch this year, and I just haven't because I've gone to a number of other things. So that is number 16. Love City Watch. This one definitely deserves to be in the published category. This is a self-published book, and I think he earns every bit of the accolades he's been getting, and that is number 16 of Darkness and Light by Ryan Cahill. And I've only read Of Blood and Bone, the first one. I've read The Fall, and there was another one, a couple little novellas, and this one. I think this is great classic fantasy involving dragons and binding, dragons that are binding towards an owner, or, a person. And I can't wait to keep going with this. And that's all I have to say about that. I think it's totally worth it if you haven't got into that series. So going into number 16, I wasn't sure which book to include, but I decided this is going to be a little bit of a placeholder for a number of the books from the Star Wars EU that I've read this year. I just started that this year. This, I decided to go with Heir to the Empire. I was, though, thinking of Path of Destruction in the Darth Bane trilogy. I've only read the one in that trilogy, and also Kenobi by John Jackson Miller. But I decided to go with Heir to the Empire. Just the strength of this trilogy. I love Thrawn as a character. When I think of what happens after Return of the Jedi, from now on, I am going to be thinking of this trilogy. And I think it's great. I already want to read through it again, even though I didn't ever finish the last. I was reading that in another book, and I decided to put it aside, and then I want to get back to it, but I decided next time I get back to it, I actually am just going to read through the first two again before I get to it. But I really, really, really like this book. So put that aside. Didn't know which book to go in for the Sun Eater series, but this is the highest Sun Eater book I have so far. It is Ashes of Man. I have read all of them up to Shadows Upon Time. I haven't read that one yet, but I have read Disquiet Gods. I read the first three books the year before, and then I wasn't sure if I was going to put Kingdoms of Death or this one. I think this is the one that takes the series in a step forward in the way I was hoping for. I do like the series. I am not as big of a mega fan as a lot of people, because I do think that when I think back about the series and the books, I don't have a lot of parts in the books that really stick out to me. I think it could be less books, but I still think it's great, and I am looking forward to a reread one day. And again, I think this is the one that I enjoyed the most. But of all the most this year, but of all the books, I think I would put Demon in White as my favorite of the series so far. Number 17. This was a new one to me, a big surprise. Darien, Empire of Salt. There are 3 books in the series. I enjoy the first one the most. A lot of people say it gets better 2 and 3, and I'm not going to. I can see why they would think that, but I enjoy the first one. And Con Iggulden is a new author to me. Obviously, C.F. Iggulden, I read a part of his Gates of Athens. I read Gates of Athens, and I do want to get to his Nero books and, a lot of his other stuff. And really, really great small trilogy. Pick up the first one to see what you think. And the last in my top, you know, 20 to 11, and this is number 11, is book one in the Ryuria Revelations. I've only read half of this, which technically this is broken down into two books, so I'm counting it, but I am going to continue on. I love Hadrian and Royce. I thought this is an amazing duo, and it's great. It's a little bit of fun, and it doesn't take itself too seriously, but the plot is pretty tight, and I thought it was great. So, my top 10 of the year, and this especially could be mixed around quite a bit, but I think my top few especially are pretty rock solid for things that were big standouts to me, and I wasn't expecting really any of them to become that. So, number 10 is probably my favorite Philip K. Dick book that I've ever read so far, and that is Ubik by Philip K. Dick. Very trippy, very short. I think, I don't know, when I was reading this, I just was on the edge of my seat at certain points where I was almost sweating out, not sweating out loud, but I was almost sweating, just hoping that things would turn out. This is in the world of, precogs, Minority Report and things. And so we have these different gifted individuals in a number of ways, and there are people that can sort of experience something and then kind of go back and reset that last 20 seconds or so, and people wouldn't even know it. And as you're reading this book, it will do that, where you're reading something and then you're just suddenly somewhere else, almost mid sentence, and if you're not paying attention, it'll throw you for a loop. So really, really great. I love Ubik. Number 9, I am actually a big fan of this series so far. I've only read 3 of them, but I am really liking my time with the Dresden Files, and I hope that I will get to more of them this year. I like this kind of fantasy. I like werewolves and, vampires and things like that, as long as it's done well. But I love the whole vampire hunting sort of thing. Again, as long as it's done well. And I am a big fan so far. I think I only have the first 4, but I hope that I can at least do another few this year to try to catch up. Number 8, I think. What am I at? It must be number 8. This was a big surprise for me. After reading Kenobi by John Jackson Miller, I decided I saw some stuff of this guy writing in the Batman universe, and this is a direct sequel to my favorite Batman, with Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson, the 1989 Batman. Batman Resurrection is a surprise to me, where I loved this. And he has 2 of them. I hope he will do more of them. I've read the first. Among my most anticipated books that I want to read the next year, I have Batman Revolution, and he's only read 2. Batman Revolution is the reason why I picked up this one, and I can't wait to get to it. I just loved it so much. So, my top 7. Number 7 is The Broken Sword by Paul Anderson. Came around at the same time as Fellowship of the Ring. A lot of people went that sort of direction with fantasy, and for good reason. This is more on the type where, the fantasy where elves are a little bit, feared, and we have trolls and shapeshifters and that sort of thing. And it's a cautionary tale in some ways of these two half brothers. One that is a half brother of sort of like a elf like, living with the elves, and another is kind of a half troll living with humans. And see, from the very beginning, there's this prophecy and almost like this collision course. And I think it's fantastic. I loved it. I can see why maybe people wouldn't, who love more of a traditional or a modern sort of, where fantasy has gone. But I think it's great. I almost felt like I was reading Beowulf or a Brothers Grimm at some point. But it's short. It's short. It'll be on my reread again shortly, and I think it's just fantastic. I think it's great. So, my number 6, and I thought this was going to be the space opera that was going to just capture me for the rest of the year, and I didn't read a single other one, but it is waiting in the back burner. I do like, I think I like it more than Sun Eater. Just, I like the way that it is put together more than the, I just think it's better. I think it's more fun. I like that it's a little more grounded into the sci-fi that I generally like, that is more a closed system within our, a little bit closer to our world, and that is book 1 of The Expanse, Leviathan Wakes. I cannot wait to continue on with the series. Now, it might be that it loses me a little bit as we go, but I think that the science in this is great. I tried the show after reading this first book, and it just is not what I am imagining, so I'm going to not do that. But I am really, really enjoying, or I did enjoy, book 1 of The Expanse, and I cannot wait to continue on. So, here are my top 5, and this was the trickiest group to pick, but this, at least the first 4 I knew were going to be in my top 10, but they kind of bounced in and out a few of these. So this last one is with an asterisk. I don't know if it's necessarily the best written, but of all the duos that I got this year, I think this is my favorite duo. And so, of all the books that I'm looking for, I kind of keep looking at this stack and wanting to continue on with them. And that is Robert Asprin's Another Fine Myth. From his Myth series, we have Myth Conceptions, and we have all these different titles that have myth in them, and it kind of sounds like the person has a lisp or something. I love Oz and Skeeve, and I love their dragon Glurp or Gleep, and this was a major surprise to me. I really like this. This is going to be, this is the best go-between for me to just find, what am I trying to say? It's like a little, palette cleanser, and I love these. I'm going to keep collecting these, and this was a surprise to me. And again, I just love the duo, and I think the world is kind of fun and silly, and big surprise. So that is my number 5, with an asterisk, again, that I don't, it kind of is more, it's kind of like my Discworld, because it's just, the humor lands maybe a little more in some ways than Discworld did, and is a little less cryptic. But again, I do love both those series, and once I read more Discworld, it'll probably overtake this if I'm honest, but I loved this. So one I actually don't have a copy of anymore, but that is The Gunslinger. I thought this series was going to totally take me away. I loved the first book. I thought it was going to be my book of the year and my series of the year. And I continued to book 2, and I was still in a little bit of a honeymoon phase. But I didn't love Eddie and Susanna. I just want the Jake and Roland show, hunting this, chasing after this man in black. And I hadn't really read any Stephen King, and I got to the third one and got really annoyed with that. And then I was halfway through the fourth one, and I got so frustrated that I just sold all of my Stephen King because I just got so frustrated with him as an author. I just find him gross. The body horror kind of stuff kind of grosses me out, and whatever. Like I'm not holding it against anyone who really likes Stephen King, and I might try it again at some point, but I was just so repulsed by that fourth book that I just got rid of all of it. I thought I'm not going to continue on. But I can't deny how much I loved that first book, and it does keep calling to me. But I just don't like any of the other characters. I didn't like any of the other books even half as much. I mean, I kind of was convincing myself that I liked the second book as much, but if I'm honest, I only really loved that first book, and then maybe again I'll try it, but I just can't imagine it's going to land the way that I'm hoping for, and it's just going to disappoint me. So who knows? Wouldn't be the end of the world to maybe try that fourth book again and continue on. So that is a major one with an asterisk, knowing it's one of my favorite books, and I just sold it off. So here are my top 3 that I was pretty certain about 2 of them. I wasn't so sure about the third one until I did this reread, and that is number 3. That will be book 1 in Lord Foul's Bane, or book 1 in Thomas Covenant, The Unbeliever. I've already spoken. I've talked about it enough. I don't want to do another premise on it. I think it's fantastic. Maybe of all the classic fantasy from the 70s and 80s, other than my another book that's coming up, or another series that's coming up, this would be my favorite. It's definitely the one that makes me think the most of the ones of this year. I think it is a masterpiece. And I'm already in book 2, The Ill-Earth War, which I also am just loving, and I'm marking it up, just like I'm marking it up too much. And I'm doing these discussion videos on the series, so you can watch that if you like. And hopefully maybe tonight I'll do the first of the Ill-Earth War. So anyway, what else can be said that hasn't been said about this? I think Thomas Covenant is the greatest character study that I have read all year, if not among the best I've ever read. I think he is just, I get so much out of reading about this guy, and I think you'll go on to Goodreads and see a lot of 1 and 2 star reviews, mainly complaining about Thomas Covenant, the main character, and I can see why, and they're not all wrong, but I do think there's more to this character and his arc than maybe gets a lot of credit. He is called sort of an anti-hero, but I still root for the guy, and you still hope that there is some sort of rehabilitation in him and in the people that he's harmed, especially a couple people. And I think it's just great. This might go down as one of my favorite fantasies of all time when I'm done with it. So, going to burn through the first 3 at least. Now, my last 2. I wasn't sure in which order to do these, but I think I'm happy with it. I am choosing Elric, and I just got a big fold in it. I was so sad when I picked it out just now. it was all folded over, bonk. But I'm choosing book 2, The Sailor on the Seas of Fate, as my second favorite book of the year because it just totally whisked me away. There's this, it's a very mystical kind of quality in the air, and this ship almost without oars just kind of floats in, and there's smoke and steam and stuff all around it, and you never know where it's going to take you. And this is a part of a much larger sort of Eternal Champion series that you can look up, and I am just so gripped by, and I need to continue on. And there is something about Elric that has just captured me, and I'm just taken by it. So an easy pick for number 2 for me. Very short little books, and I cannot wait. I just have adored it so far. And in this first book, it's almost more sci-fi than fantasy, even though there are fantastical elements. But, in this one, it does some things with time where we go way in the far future and then sort of I can't say far present, but how did it do it? Anyway, it's sailing to the future. The next one is sailing to the present and then sailing to the past. And I just love this book. And my best book of the year, because I think it just is the most complete book that I read, meaning I think the characters were great and the plot was great, and it had me just all the way through, and it stoked the highest emotions in this. And if it'll be part of it might be my favorite book of all time at the moment. If someone was to ask me, I might say it was this one, but that is Guy Gavriel Kay's The Lions of Al Rassan. This is the ending and the book that I think about probably the most. When it was done, this one just stuck with me, and the emotions stuck with me, and I still think about certain characters. I'm very taken by Guy Gavriel Kay. I also read Sailing to Sarantium, which could have made it on this list, as well as Lord of Emperors, and I can't wait to go to things like A Song for Our Bond and some of these ones that are more in China or a Chinese kind of equivalent. And I really am taken by that author with the very few things I have read. And the best of them so far, to me, is The Lions of Al Rassan. So, those are my top 20 books of the year. A few of those, maybe The Lions of Al Rassan and these would be somewhere in my top favorite books of all time. But we'll see. That sort of list I would have to think about for a while. If you'd like to see my top 10 books of all time, I don't know if I've ever actually done one. I'd have to go look on my channel. And after doing this for a few years, reading a lot of books, I'd feel comfortable at least making a top 10 books of all time up to this point. So what do you think? What of these books do you disagree with? And that's the great thing about books. We can disagree, and sometimes it's about taste and reading it at a certain moment in a certain vibe. And yeah, so what are you looking forward to reading? And I just cannot wait for this next 2026 year. I am anticipating a really, really great year. And some of these that are already on this list, I can't wait to continue on with. And I can't wait to hopefully end more series than I have in the past. I really didn't end like anything this year, and that's a shame because I don't want to have too many loose ends. So anyway, I will talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.